Thank you, Steve. So, first of all, thank you all for being here. Thank you again to all of our sponsors. I'm so grateful to all of our community leaders for prioritizing transportation in the way that you do. Today, we are joined by many of those community leaders, including Chair of the Senate Transportation Committee, Senator Greg Dolezal, whom we'll be hearing from in just a little bit. We're also joined by Representative Lauren McDonald, somewhere over here. There you are. And from our Forsyth County Board of Commissioners, Chairman Alfred John, Commissioners Carrie Hill, Cindy Mills, and Laura Simonson are also here. Thank you for joining us. Forsyth County's Board of Education member, Mike Valdez, is here. We're also joined by GDOT District Engineer Jason Dykes, Forsyth County Manager David McKee, Forsyth County CFO Mr. Brian Clark, and Assistant County Managers Barry Lucas and Tony Tarnacki. Please join me in thanking these very dedicated leaders for their support and being here today. So I was thinking about this on the way here today. I am sorry, Representative Brent Cox, you snuck in. I'm sorry, it's the hoodie. I missed you. I'm sorry. Thank you for being with us, Representative Brent Cox. Thank you so much. By the way, did I miss any? It's election season. I need to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Did I miss anybody else? All right. So I was saying on the way in, 11 years ago, I got a call from a newly elected county commissioner, Cindy Mills, and she said, you know, we don't talk about transportation nearly enough in this community. They do a great job in Hall County. Let's go over to Hall County and see what they're doing at their transportation summit. And so we organized a trip with a couple of other folks and from the county, and we went to Hall County to their very impressive transportation summit. And we got back in the car. Now I will tell you, one of their sponsors is a big franchise owner of McDonald's. So we had McDonald's for lunch, and we got in the car and Cindy said, now you guys are going to go do this. We're going to do this. We won't be having McDonald's for lunch. And by the way, thank you to Chef David. Awesome job today. Beautiful food. And so this is the 10th Transportation Summit, because the year following that, we put that on, and boy, it's come a long way. Back in the day, I was sitting down at a desk with John Kennard. We were putting PowerPoint slides together and trying to figure out how to make maps work. And now these beautiful presentations and the great work of Russell Brown and his communications team, stellar, top-notch. Thank you for the great job, and thank you for the partnership. So much on that. So, and since I would especially wanted to say something about Commissioner Mills, since she is leaving office at the end of the year, and I'm not sure I'll have a chance to say thank you for, making us go to Hall County 11 years ago. So this has been a great event, and it's become a hallmark event in this community, and certainly for us. So Forsyth County boasts a rich history of transportation development that has evolved significantly to meet the needs of our changing community. Our transportation priorities, such as road expansions, enhancements to pedestrian infrastructure, and critical safety improvements, play a vital role in supporting our community growth and development. Please join me in welcoming our County Manager, David McKee, as he shares more about our ongoing transportation efforts.
Thank you, James. If you're following, let's not do that. Thank you, James. If you're following along the program, we're going to talk a little bit about some of our projects that we have going on. I think it's listed as project updates. I think what is more important from the takeaway that I'm going to cover here in my remarks is how we get to those projects. And as we look at SPLOST programs, bond programs, any of the way however we fund these projects, I think it's important for everybody to realize how we get to that point. Very special thank you to Forsyth County Chamber, South Forsyth Rotary Club, and Astor Celebrations for hosting us here today. I also want to thank our state delegation and partners at GDOT for taking the time to join us today in continuing the work that we do here in the community for transportation. To our commissioners and our other elected officials, your support and engagement in making Forsyth County an attractive place to call home and visit is paramount in the success that we each experience here today. Thank you for your tireless work. And for our county's incredible staff and partners that we work on planning, designing, and implementing and maintaining our transportation system here in this county is a very large part in what we are able to do successfully here. Also want to thank and recognize our contractors. We couldn't do it without the work of our contractors and the partners that we have. So with that, how about a round of applause for all of the men and women that make our transportation system to where we are today. And lastly, Forsyth County's transportation outlook, plans for the future, congestion level, and funding of projects would look quite different than it does today if it weren't for the voters' approval and the valuable funding resources that we have seen in this county, such as SPLOST, our transportation bond, and other key funding sources that allow us to stay ahead of congestion. I guess that last statement could probably be argued a good bit, but staying ahead of congestion. Thank you again for your community support. So how did we get here today? How did everybody get here today? I didn't see any teleportation beams in the lobby, or I didn't hear him recognize Representative Jones, but I didn't see any autonomous flying vehicles get here. We got here today, not yet, that's right, I heard that. We got here today the same way we would have 75 years ago in a car, most likely, or you rode with somebody. You may have traveled up State Route 400 and saw the new McInnes Ferry interchange. Perhaps you stopped at Halcyon for some coffee and decided to take the new Ronald Reagan extension north from McFarland Road. Maybe you came here from Johns Creek along Old Atlanta Road, where a critical widening project, long needed critical widening project, is underway and is going well on schedule. Or maybe you've noticed your commute was remarkably quicker through North Forsyth, where a signalized intersection was removed at State Route 369 and 400. We're one of Metro Atlanta's most traveled state routes or you're along one of our county maintained roads, or many of the mixed use trails connected to our schools, shopping, and neighborhoods. When it comes to transportation, our team's mission is that your commute is the last thing that you're thinking about while you're traveling. Instead of stressing over congestion, long lights and intersections, potholes, or how late you're going to be to get your kids to or from soccer, our goal is to have your thoughts be where your family's going to go eat tonight, which trail you're going to hike on Sawney Mountain this weekend, or which campground you're going to visit along Lake Lanier. Or maybe, just maybe, you're worried about the upcoming Volunteers and Dogs game that's going to be between the hedges in a few weeks. If our commuters' thoughts are on their lives and not the traffic and commute times in our community, it means that we are doing part of our job correct. Reaching that goal requires great partnerships and support to ensure that the decisions we make today create a brighter future on the roads for tomorrow. Partnerships with GDOT, our state leaders, and local contractors means that the county is not alone in making these decisions in our future. Decisions that impact whether you make your child's dance recital on time are not made in a vacuum. Decisions that impact whether you need to make a career change or not because of how long your commute time is. Or maybe if a business decides to bring its headquarters here and bring more jobs to this community. That's why perhaps the most critical partner in all of our transportation decisions are you, not just you here in the room, but all of our citizens here in this county. Our residents, businesses, voters, and families are critical to the decisions and how we make our transportation better for tomorrow. So what are some of those projects that are underway today to enhance tomorrow's commute? We're going to begin by a little bit in Forsyth County, South Forsyth County. We're going to talk a little bit more about this later in the program. Very much a regionally impacted project in directly related to the gathering at South Forsyth is proposed. This is a proposed 100-acre development just south of us here, but the Express Lane project. Jason and Senator Dolezal will give us a little bit of update on some of those Express Lane projects. Those are very much regional projects. And we're going to talk a little bit about maybe what it's not. I think that's some of the discussions that we have heard is that it's MARTA or it's something else. So we'll go a little bit into that. Still have several hurdles to go through as we're looking at the South Forsyth, the Gathering at South Forsyth project. As you pass through, we talked briefly just a second ago about the McGinnis Ferry interchange. And you'll recall that we have a major widening project, east-west widening project on McGinnis Ferry Road. That's from 2-lane to 4-lane on McGinnis Ferry Road. That will be the last section of McGinnis Ferry Road from State Route 85 to State Route 400. When that interchange is completed, that GDOT's working on now, and State Route 400 will have an east-west corridor directly between those two state routes. So how do we prepare our infrastructure for that day, which is coming on the horizon, we all know? Working with our state partners and other jurisdictions is exactly how we do that. Again, we cannot do that alone. Just north of McGinnis Ferry at Union Hill is where the the Express Lane project will terminate. And again, we'll go over that in a little bit more detail in just a few minutes. Half a mile east of McGinnis Ferry Road interchange, Ronald Reagan Boulevard, and the new extension of that thoroughfare that runs parallel to 400. Since opening this year, Ronald Reagan now connects McFarland Union Hill intersection all the way to Bald Ridge Road, which is incoming. This was a SPLOST-funded project extension between McFarland and Majors Road, adds an additional 3.6 miles of 4-lane alternative route that alleviates congestion within that corridor. This segment is estimated to move over up to 35,000 vehicles a day, and it completes that 16-mile corridor and connects Cumming to Alpharetta, adding additional alleviation to increased traffic that could be proposed by the Gathering at South Forsyth. Investing strategic infrastructure improvements for this growing area has been and is a clear need, but now more than ever, it's important that we understand where those projects come from and how they come about. The Comprehensive Transportation Plan, which is updated every 5 to 6 years, and most recently was updated this past August, serves as our roadmap. That's the roadmap that our staff goes by when we're making recommendations as projects come in. The plan includes evaluation of how the county will grow in the next 20 years with respect to the transportation system, and prioritizes all intersections and roads, short, medium, and long-term range, from down to the project level. Ultimately, it helps guide capital investments to the county's transportation system through the lens of creating healthy, livable communities and furthering economic viability. The plan provides a list of projects that the county takes and implements based on the highest priority or the largest need. And while it takes into consideration input from county transportation leaders, as well as state and regional guidance, the plan needs feedback from people driving on the roads every single day. We can take all the data in the world and create a project list, but it's feedbacks from residents asking questions. When does the light turn green? Where can I get to where I need to go, right? That's their most important thing. Without that feedback, the plan would not be complete. In a county that has a population that's gone from 50,000 in 1996 to close to 280,000 in less than 30 years, those questions carry a great deal of weight and must be considered as we go through this project or through this program. And our growth also begs an answer to every community's toughest infrastructure enigma. Do we spend taxpayer dollars now to build out the infrastructure system today in anticipation of projected heavy growth? If you've heard me talk before, we don't tell our story well enough as local government. One of the biggest challenges we have is just around that. Do we spend the money now and then growth doesn't come? Now our taxpayers are telling us that we've overspent somewhere. If it's too late, they're sitting in those long lines of congestion. Now they're equally as frustrated or more frustrated. Finding that right balance on both approaches is a delicate strategic endeavor. While arguments can be made about the need for new projects to prepare for the future, there's no question that a proactive approach is necessary today to address our existing roads. Forsyth County has over 1,200 miles of county-maintained roads that are experiencing more traffic today than ever. High-traffic county roads such as Ronald Reagan, McFarland, Mathis Airport Road, and others have reached a point where they shall be resurfaced every 12 years or so, when many of our subdivision roads can be on a 20-year rotation basis. While our fantastic roads and bridges team averages 50 miles of roads a year, of county roads a year of resurfacing, that number is only going to need to grow as we continue with our population and continue to keep the level of service that you've become accustomed to. As with everything in our world today, that work comes at a steeper and steeper cost. Our resurfacing projects are funded in part by the Local Maintenance Improvement Grant. You may hear that referenced as LMIG each year, and thank you to our state partners and GDOT for our partnership in getting those grant funds through the state. While LMIG funds from GDOT are incredibly beneficial, that only funds about half of the resurfacing needs that Forsyth County has to do each year to reach 50 miles of paving. While each resurfacing mile cost, ready for this, $160,000 each resurfacing mile cost us, that's roughly $8 to $10 million a year that is needed just for resurfacing and just maintaining our existing asset infrastructure. So where does the other $3 to $4 million come from, even $5 million? Historically, that has come from SPLOST. James mentioned it. I believe James mentioned it, that we've had 30 years worth of SPLOST. So historically, that's come from SPLOST. It has also come from some from the transportation bond and other major funding sources that we have. Without SPLOST, we would see a vast shortage of the needed dollars to be able to keep that resurfacing program going. And we'll talk a little bit more in a few minutes in the panel about what some of those other projects are. So how do we get to where we need to go tomorrow while we're not sitting in congestion, looking out into the future as we could see our population grow over 300,000? We may or may not have the teleportation or the autonomous flying vehicles, but you and the county voters have a voice in our future that it holds in our transportation projects. You have the power of your vote, have the opportunity to guide the future's transportation funding here in Forsyth County. Thank you.
SPLOST stands for Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax.
It's been approved since 1987 here in the county. 1 penny of every dollar goes to a fund that the county can utilize on capital improvement projects.
With the SPLOST tax, over 30% of who pays into SPLOST are people that just come through here. They don't live here.
So that means if we didn't have SPLOST, the homeowners and the business owners and any property taxpayer would be paying for that infrastructure.
So it almost seems a little crazy to me to vote against something that over 30% is going to be paid for by somebody else, to think that it might go on property tax later.
SPLOST has always been the source of local funding for our transportation improvement projects. For all our capital projects that are transportation improvement projects, that has always been our funding source. It's never been in the general fund. You know, we have our maintenance there, but nothing for capital improvements.
By and large, the biggest lift that we have had from SPLOST is roads, bridges, sidewalks, intersection improvements.
If you looked at our short, mid, and long-range projects, $1.8 billion of projects over about 20 years. So it's a tremendous amount of money to go from a 2-lane road to a 4-lane road. To do that widening can be anywhere from $15 to $20 million per mile.
Through the years, we've always had SPLOST to help fund our resurfacing. Well, we're going to need about $8 million total per year to do the required resurfacing, as we're now averaging about $160,000 per mile. In order to get 50 miles a year done, we need about $8 million a year.
If it doesn't happen, the county won't close down, but our citizens won't get the benefits of the things they expect either.
Certainly to the tune of $100+ million, add an additional challenge in a lack of a resource to do something about the transportation challenges.
I think that we want to live in a community where you're not spending big segments of your personal time sitting in traffic. We want great roads that are safe and also accommodate the traffic.
I understand the angst of people. They feel taxed to death. But SPLOST is not just about our parks. It's not just about our roads and the improvements that we desperately need, but it's also, about public safety and the benefits that go into our fire and to our sheriff's office and just other infrastructure improvements.
I'm a property taxpayer, and every homeowner and business owner in Forsyth County are taxpayers. I don't want my property taxes to go up to pay for roads we need.
And we have a list of projects that we're ready to move forward with. We just, funding's the issue.
Now it's on. So, and that question of funding that the video just asked is a great place for us to start our discussion today. We're going to hear from some of our community leaders in a panel discussion. I'd like to ask you all to please come on and join us on the stage. All right. So I'll introduce everybody with a question for you, but it's always a pleasure to hear directly from the Georgia Department of Transportation. Today we have our district engineer, Jason Dykes, joining us. Jason, thank you very much for being here with us. We'll also hear from the chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee, Senator Greg Dolezal. County Manager David McKee, thank you for the insights you just shared. We'll have a little bit more discussion as well. And additionally, I'm very pleased to welcome to the stage the chair of the SPLOST 9 Referendum Committee, Jan Rooney, who will be serving as the Chamber's Board Chair in 2025 and as a local business owner. So thank you very much for being with us as well. So on the topic of transportation funding, let's start with a high level. Senator Dolezal, in your role with the Senate Transportation Committee, you're heavily involved in development of the annual state transportation budget. Can you talk about the budget for transportation and what's applicable to what we're talking about today?
I will. We brought a couple of slides. I thought you might ask this question. So Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, I want to give him a lot of credit because when he asked me to chair the Transportation Committee, traditionally in the Senate and the House, the policy side is somewhat disconnected from the finance side. What I mean by that is there's the Transportation Committee, but then within the Appropriations Committee, which does the budget, there's a number of subcommittees, and there's a Transportation Subcommittee in Appropriations. And when he asked me to chair the Transportation Committee, we had a conversation because I told him I thought it was very important that the policy aligned with the funding. So he was gracious enough to allow me to chair both the Transportation Committee, but also the Subcommittee on Appropriations. And so in the House, Chairman Rick Jaspers, who is the member of our delegation here, is the member of the Transportation, or chair of the Transportation Committee. But then a gentleman named Clay Perkle is the chair of the Senate Transportation Subcommittee on Appropriations. And so they meet and send us a budget out of the House per the Constitution, and we massage that budget a little bit and make any changes that we deem necessary, then ultimately come up with a final bill. So if we could bring the first slide up, I thought it might be helpful for you guys to see how we spend $4 billion of your dollars a year. And about 2.2 billion of these dollars come from the state budget and about 1.8 billion are federal. A couple of things I'll point out at a high level: the capital construction number, that $2 billion, that's funded by our motor fuel tax. Or if we suspend the motor fuel tax, as we have a couple of times in the last couple of years, we backfill that with general fund dollars. But traditionally, that is the bucket that we use for capital projects. That's new construction. So that's the 285-400 interchange. That was the money that we used to pay for our portion of widening 400 way back in the day. We mentioned LMIG earlier, so second to last item on the left-hand side of the column. That's very important for us locally because that's what we use for the resurfacing dollars. And we put about $220 million a year into LMIG. But there's a lot of other things that happen in here. So routine maintenance that you see over there on the right, the $568 million, that is more so things like cutting the medians, putting up guardrails, and doing a lot of the other things besides actually resurfacing. Traffic management that you see on there are things like the HERO unit and signalization, standing up our operations center as well. And those are just a number of the things. And the last thing I'll point out that is somewhat interesting, it's not really applicable to or directly related to Forsyth County, but the ports are only $1.4 million. And we have the third busiest port in America right here in Georgia, but those ports fund themselves. So that's what we did kind of traditionally, and that's a traditional budget. Now we come back every year and true up our budget. So we pass a forward-looking budget in session that looks forward 12 years based on the governor's revenue estimate. And then when we get back into session, we see what the real numbers are, and we often will revise that. So if we can go to the next slide, Governor Kemp led the way this year, this past legislative session, in what we call the baby budget, so the FY24 budget, and injected $1.5 billion specifically into transportation. And where that landed financially, kind of the breakdown of that 1.5, you can see here. I think what's important to point out here are a couple different things. One, we've heard us talk a lot in the past at these kind of events about freight and logistics. When we look forward 30 years, particularly as it relates to the port and all the truck traffic coming out of the port of Savannah and hitting 285 to get through or around the city, everything that on these projections today is maybe yellow or red, in terms of like a green, yellow, red, goes to black if we stay on our current existing funding path. So we recognize the need for additional funding into what we call freight and logistics. It's a $27 billion unfunded need that we know that we have. So we took about a third of that $1.5 billion, really is just a down payment to begin the process to get us used to flexing our muscle, if you will, of putting general fund dollars into the freight logistics program. That becomes very important for Forsyth County when we begin to think about the inland port and all of the traffic that will be coming out of the inland port that will be in Gainesville, just north of here, and kind of how we plan around that. Secondly, we took $600 million and put that into the capital construction projects. That's analogous to the $2 billion for new roads. I'll talk about that in just a second. But then lastly, we put $250 million. We played with this a little bit. We put it into local road assistance, but it essentially functions like LMIG. So LMIG requires matching dollars. We knew the locals probably would not have the money to match in their budgets at that late stage of the game. So we basically doubled our LMIG budget, but did not require the local match. And so that was where we saw that $1.5 billion go in. It was a great leadership move by the governor, and I think some wise decisions here by the General Assembly that look at a broad swath of our needs. If you can go to the next slide, I want to talk about what that does for us locally here. So of that $1.5 billion, you saw about $580 million went to capital projects. Of that $580 million that went to capital projects, $580 million, $110 million came to Forsyth County to fast track the widening of State Route 20 by a year. So that project was able to move forward a year, frees up money in the future. And that really was a known project that we knew we were going to spend that money, but we were able to pull that forward with that money. The second thing is the McGinnis Ferry widening project. There was a three-way deal essentially between the county, the city of Alpharetta, and the state of Georgia as to how that widening would happen. And the state of Alpharetta has not fulfilled on the city of Alpharetta has not come through with their funding. And so the state stepped up and provided $10 million of additional funding to go towards that project out of that $580 million. So I think it's probably important to recognize that that's $120 million, right? There's 159 counties in the state of Georgia, and 120 million of that 580 is coming back here. So that really reflects, I think, the planning director who sits under the governor, Janine Miller, and Commissioner Russell McMurray, that they recognize the need in Forsyth County, and that the General Assembly it recognizes that need as well. Our delegation worked hard to ensure that we got our fair share of that, and I'm really happy to report I think we got something that really does accurately reflect the need. And then lastly, a friend of mine texted me about 2 months ago, like, man, what is going on? We are repaving every road on my daily commute. This is awesome. And this right here is a reflection of that. So you heard that $8 million number, the annual need that we have locally. 3.7 million extra came down to Forsyth County for local maintenance resurfacing. So if you drive on any of these roads, Shiloh Road is where my office is, they're repaving it today. And so a lot of these roads that you're seeing get widened are due to that additional $1.5 billion that we were able to bring back home here.
Senator, thank you very much. That's a great overview. Well, and we'll move on to GDOT. Jason, thank you for joining us. And we know that the dollars that the senator is just talking about aim to improve the state's infrastructure and our own infrastructure by advancing the timeline of some of those key projects. As you're aware, we have a SPLOST on the ballot this fall. And could you maybe touch on, when communities around the state, and certainly in our region, have SPLOST in place, what impact that has for GDOT and the work that GDOT does in a community?
Yeah, thanks, James. Of course, there's always opportunities that GDOT looks for to partner with local communities. When it comes to funding, if it just makes sense if you think about it, that if you're able to provide a match to go along with those federal and state dollars that the senator just mentioned, that you're able to advance some of those projects that are important to the community. And Forsyth County is consistently top rated as far as one of the top places to do business and live and to work in the state of Georgia. And with that, it's also, as David mentioned earlier, the population growth for this county is actually, for the next 20 years, actually will be the top growing county in the state. So with that, you're going to need to be able to build the infrastructure to support that growth. And so if you look at other communities across the state that have dedicated funding sources for transportation, they're able to better keep pace with and meet the needs of their community and the growth.
Great. We have heard Commissioner McMurray say we like to help communities that help themselves.
That's right. That's right.
So that's very good. So, earlier, David gave us a great update on some local road projects and kind of the state of the local roads and transportation. Would you mind, if you would, just update us on some key state projects that are happening in Forsyth County?
Yeah, sure. So you don't have to go far to find an orange barrel from where we're at right now. So we have one of the big projects that we have going on right now is just the Highway 9 widening, which is actually for us 4 projects that starts at the Fulton County line and goes all the way up to State Route 20, and it's going to widen 20 to a 4-lane divided highway with a median. And that project got kicked off in April of last year, and so our contractors have been busy, relocating utilities, laying drainage pipes and building walls and a bridge. And so you're going to continue to see work going on those projects, some lane shifts and things like that as they work through stage construction. The last phase of that project actually was started this past summer, and that goes from State Route 141 up to 20. And that's that last phase. And it's so the first 3 phases should be complete by December of next year. This last phase should be complete by February of 28. And those, if you consider the right-of-way costs, the construction costs, and all the engineering that goes into that, you're looking at about a $320 million investment in those roads and that road system. And the other major project that we have going on is the State Route 20 widening that we're just talking about. That's just really getting kicked off good. They're doing some clearing and things like that, getting ready for construction out there. And again, that's another, it's going to widen State Route 20 to a 4-lane divided highway from just west of town at North Corners Parkway all the way out to Post Road. And that's another, like I said, if you consider all the costs, about another little over $200 million worth of investment in the infrastructure there. And so if you look just in those 2 corridors there, we've got over $500,000 worth of work, within a 15-minute drive of where we're sitting right now. That's just going on right now. So, and then just to touch on the Express Lane project, just to kind of give you an update. So I guess the biggest question is, what are the Express Lanes? So It's a 16-mile stretch between the North Springs Station and just north of McFarland Road. And the project is proposed to build an express lane on each side, so both directions, both north and south, that'll be available for use for any of your regular Peach Pass users, public transit. So if you like the express buses that Vanpool and things like that, we'll be able to use those express lanes. And then there is a MARTA component that's in Fulton County that will add some stations down at Holcomb Bridge and Wimmer Parkway and North Point. That's going to add a bus rapid transit, which is it's bus rapid transit, or BRT, if you may hear that term, is intended to kind of operate with the same kind of reliability and expectation as rail. But it's going to be a little more flexible of being able to use those bus rapid transit, or excuse me, those express lanes. And so this project is what we call a public-private partnership, and we partnered with our partner is State Route 400 Peach Partners, and it's a conglomerate of investors and contractors that came together. And the cost of those express lane is about $4.6 billion. So it's a large price tag to build those, and they've agreed to finance, build, operate, and maintain those lanes for the next 50 years by collecting the tolls that they'll receive for that duration to be able to do those things. So, but like I said, it's a lot of work going on in the county. Those are just a few of the projects that we have. I have a whole list of projects that are going on in Forsyth County. But and like the senator said, this is an important county to the state of Georgia and to this region. So,
Jason, thank you. So let's jump over back to David. So on the topic of projects, so if SPLOST is renewed in Forsyth County, what are some of those key projects that SPLOST dollars could fund?
Yeah, excuse me, thanks, James. And I'm also glad there's some time has passed since the senator went, because I don't have slides. So we're going to go based off of memory. And but thank you. So something that Jason didn't talk about that we partner with GDOT a lot, and we'll make our SPLOST dollars go further, is the intersections. There are a number of intersection projects, whether it's let's say State Route 9 at Hopewell Road is an intersection project. I think some of the other big transportation projects, McGinnis Ferry Road widening, we've heard that a couple different times today, that being the last 2-lane section of McGinnis Ferry Road. We had to break that project up into 2 phases. Phase 1 is funded. Phase 2, we still have some challenges, and maybe Senator can talk to us a little bit about what some of those reinvestment dollars are going to be from that express lane project. And here in Forsyth County, we have that phase 2, if you will, of McGinnis Ferry that would meet some of those requirements. There are a number of sidewalk projects as well, and when we think of transportation, we don't think of sidewalks, but there's several residential communities along Nichols Road. I guess it's just to the north of Lambert High School. If you go out there now, there's essentially a path worn in the grass where students are walking back and forth. So a sidewalk in those communities would be funded through our SPLOST program. Again, I can't stress the importance of the resurfacing program. I've had the opportunity to work in several different communities, and what John Kennard and the engineering team do, and the way they rate their pavement, and then have stayed on top of it, and then our commissioners' willingness to fund those. Our existing assets is key. When you start to have existing assets that are riddled with potholes and everything else, that takes away from the maintenance, that they can't be mowing or they can't do other things. So a lot of the program is continuing more of what we have from a resurfacing standpoint. We talked a little bit about the sidewalk projects, and another big project. It's somewhat small as it relates to the region, but we have challenges that we'll be able to work through. Elmo Road at Bannister Road is one that comes to mind that we'll have to work with our state partners and realignment of that. And if you live in that community, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The AM and PM peak hours It's a nightmare to get in and out of there. We've made some minor improvements, but nothing like that is needed. But if SPLOST is successful, it'll give us the dollars needed to do some improvements to those type things.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So let's jump, Jan, to you. Thank you for joining us. The Chamber's been a champion of investing in transportation infrastructure and infrastructure in general, really since the beginning of SPLOST 30 years ago, and it continues to be. Might be helpful to talk a little bit, if you would, about why that's such an important priority for the business community.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. I think for us as a chamber, it's an important initiative, but also it's important for the citizens of Forsyth County. A poll was done, and 40% of our county residents feel that transportation is extremely important to them, their number one priority. We don't want to sit in traffic. We want to make sure we have a good quality of life, and SPLOST is an avenue for that. As far as the chamber initiatives for economic development, it fits very nicely with that. Many, many years ago, I believe it was you and a prior county commissioner, I don't want to say your age, James, but many years ago, they worked on an initiative to really help flip our commercial digest so that we could attract businesses to come and do business in Forsyth County so that our sole source of income doesn't rely on us as property owners through property taxes. So the transportation piece of that SPLOST helps provide us really does help fund that, other than just increasing property taxes for us.
Very good. So David, let's kind of address the alternative for a moment. So what could we as a community expect if SPLOST isn't renewed? What happens?
So James, that's a great question. And like the senator, I anticipated getting this question and have thought about it a lot. If there's very little that keeps me awake at night, but this is one of them, is what if we don't? Our CFOs in the room, and Brian and I talk all the time about the limited resources we have and what those go to. And the reality is it's the balloon, right? Where the balloon's going to be squeezed from somewhere else. It could mean that a service reduction, it could mean a number of different things. Most likely what has happened in the past when we have programs that have not been funded fully, then those projects get pushed off, and that pinch point becomes more real with the citizens that are sitting in traffic. When you go to your park and there are programs, capital investments at the park, because remember, SPLOST is not for operations and maintenance. It has to be for capital. So from a park standpoint, we just opened Lanierland Park earlier this year. So those are the type of projects that would be put off. You heard the dollar amounts in some of these projects and the millions of dollars that it would take. I suppose that there would be some tough decisions that would have to be made if we continue down that same level of service. It could mean a millage increase, and that would affect all of the residents.
Very good. Well, thank you for clarifying some of that. So Jan, we're going to ask you the closing question. So, it's no secret we're all paying more in taxes than we've ever paid, with assessments being higher. And we're still feeling the pinch of inflation across the country. So why should voters in Forsyth County vote to renew SPLOST?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that question, because when you put your name on something like I'm going to champion SPLOST, you get lots of phone calls with that very question. And so I had one just yesterday. So I think I'm going to answer it kind of in a double negative, which my children love this when I answer this way. So why not to vote for SPLOST, right? Because some of the complaints, and I am going to call a little bit about the elephant in the room. I know there are some people in this room who feel like there have been some financial decisions made in the county that they don't agree with. But not voting for SPLOST isn't a way to deal with your disagreement there. Maybe reaching out to your county commissioners, that might be the better way to handle that issue. But for SPLOST, it kind of helps what you're upset about in the first place, which is really putting the money that we're paying in a bucket. They're using it for parks, which we all enjoy. We're the healthiest county. We are the healthiest county because we get to get out and do things, and also we have a phenomenal hospital. But secondly, it helps with our transportation. So we need more roads. We all want more roads. None of us wants to be in traffic. So it does help with that too. And then thirdly, it also helps with our public safety. You know, our sheriff needs state-of-the-art equipment to keep us safe. Our fire department needs that as well. And these are all things that are put in our SPLOST. So want to make sure that we vote yes to SPLOST so that we can continue down that path. And then just if you feel like you're going to vote no, vote yes, and then call your commissioner, because that's why you're voting no. Have a conversation.
Thank you, Jane. So thank you all very much for joining us on the panel. We're very glad that you're here, and I just thank you all for your insights. So, you know, at this annual event, you know, one message that remains consistent, and it has for years, is that transportation is pretty daggone expensive. And, you know, widening a 2-lane road to 4 lanes has an average construction cost of $16 million. David mentioned earlier the cost associated with resurfacing a mile of road. Do you recall, was it $160,000 a mile? Just extraordinary. A new overpass can average roughly $65 million. So where does all that money come from? And that's a key question our community is trying to answer in a couple of weeks. I also, you know, I assume that most people in this room are absolutely in favor of SPLOST. I hope so. But I would ask you that we need you to talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, make sure that they understand. The county has a role of informing the community about what SPLOST is and how it operates and what's in it. And the business community, we have a responsibility of telling the community why it's so important and that they should do this. We have a leadership responsibility. So I'm asking you, you have at your programs today, sponsored by Banesh, I should say. There's a little flyer in there that I hope you will take back to your communities, hop on social media and talk about it a good bit. Because since 1987, our community has relied on SPLOST to aid in building that road infrastructure as a sales tax. SPLOST is paid, you know, by anyone passing through the community. 34%. We commissioned a study looking at merchant retail providers. 34% of SPLOST is paid by people who do not live in Forsyth County. Why would we want to give that 34% up? If property owner, if Forsyth County voters say yes to renewing SPLOST, we can expect to see $122 million for roads. So I really encourage all of you here, everybody that's watching online, to please consider how transportation improvements are needed in this community and needed in your everyday life. So please educate yourself on the options and make your November vote to renew SPLOST. So, and in partnership with Rotary, thank you all, by the way, the South Forsyth Rotary Club. It's been a while since we've partnered with you guys. Thank you. I know I say this every time we partner with Rotary Club, moving a Rotary Club meeting is not a little thing. And so I thank you for accommodating us and partnering with us. And so I'd like everybody to please stand. And if you're a Rotarian, please join me in the 4-way test. The 4-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you. Have a great day and rest of your week.